You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Today, John and I will be speaking with landscape and night sky photographer Rachel Jones-Ross. But before we get into the conversation, let's aim the spotlight on the upcoming 2020 B&H OPTIC All-Star Conference. Usually we attend this fantastic travel and outdoor photography event in person, but this time around, you know what's going on. Anywho, check the link in our show notes for the details of this year's virtual but still free conference. This year's keynote speakers include Art Wolf and Franz Lanting, and the sponsors include Sony, Canon, Nikon, Olympus, and Panasonic. Today's guest is Rachel Ross, and she'll be speaking at the event, and we're going to get a short preview of her presentation and maybe even learn a little bit about how she goes about her work. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great having you here. Let's start with the beginning. How'd you get into photography, and specifically, how'd you find a niche in shooting landscape and night photography? And what came first, the inquisitive gal with the camera in her hand, or the inquisitive gal who likes going out at night and staring up at the heavens?
That's a great question. I have never really considered myself an outdoorsy person. I'm not naturally athletic, and I say that because I think a lot of people have this idea that I'm some sort of like rock star superstar that does all this hiking and, you know, I'm super athletic or something, but it's really not like that.
John, why did we get started with this? You told me she was, but she said she isn't. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, you would think so because of the amount of hiking that I do. One trip in September, I hiked 110 kilometers in 5 days, and wow. Every single bit of me hurt after that. But I love to do what I do. So I think my love of photography came first before the love of, or I don't know if you want to really call it a love, but that push to be outdoors, that push to push myself and find my limits, and I find them all the time. I think the photography came first, and then I had to learn the skills to be outdoors more, especially in the Canadian winter. So I'm from the Canadian Rockies. I live just outside of Banff National Park, and it gets really cold here in the wintertime. And so I've really had to learn some skills for being outdoors, but definitely the love of photography came first.
And my question, and maybe you answered it just given how close you are to such, beautiful landscape, but why did you gravitate toward this type of photography if you weren't really an outdoors person? There's such a wide range of stuff you could be shooting with.
Yeah,
and
for
warmer
sure.
places you could work.
Beach photography. Come on.
Well, I do live where I live, and it's, obviously it's some of the most beautiful scenery in the world to be here in the Rockies. And I'm sure that has influenced me a ton. The thing that really got me going, though, was I have, been seeing an acquaintance of mine post pictures of the Milky Way online on Facebook or on social media. And I was just fascinated by that. I've always had a camera in my hand, and I took pictures of my family, and I did all that kind of stuff. And when I traveled, I love to travel. I always took pictures, but I never really got into the technical side of photography until I learned how to shoot the stars. And then it just changed everything for me. It changed how I looked at the world and how I felt when I was outside. And, I can actually feel the light change before I see it change. That's a kind of an amazing experience when you're tuned into that. So yeah, it was a love of night sky photography that really got me out there and obsessively learning the technical side of photography so that I could produce the kinds of images that represented that experience of being outdoors at night.
Could you elaborate on that? You just said about you could feel the change of light. Could you talk about that a little bit? I kind of understand what you're saying, but I'm not quite sure if I do. I want to hear your words for this one.
I don't know if I've ever tried to really articulate this, so bear with me. But
okay.
There are moments when I'm outside, even without my camera now, And even before I really register with my eyes that the light is changing, I feel it. It's like often it's like a warmth or
Okay.
and maybe an alignment, question mark. But yeah, I can feel it start to change. And then I register and I start looking for it. Oh, yeah, it's, the light's changing. It's becoming golden hour, or the light is just coming up, or, there's lots of moments when the light is changing. Moonrise is another one, where sometimes I feel that really before I see the light actually change, I start to register it just in my body, just having that experience of being outdoors.
So you tune to it. You tune to your subject. Okay. Got it.
And I've also noticed, I can tell what time it is in the morning when I wake up just in my apartment by what the quality of light is in my room. So I guess that's another way that, you can kind of feel the light and know what time of day it is before you even see it or register it.
Yeah. And they messed us up last week when they changed the clocks again. I have to get used to it all over again now.
For sure. Yeah.
Are night shooters different from daytime shooters? Is there a common thread running between the two schools of photography? Have you ever thought about that? Or do you think there is a difference? Are you all insomniacs?
I think there's a little bit of insomnia that must run among nighttime photographers. I've also started to think that maybe night photographers just don't mind the experience of struggle as much. So I don't know if you guys are aware of the etymology of the word passion.
No, you're about to tell us, though.
Yeah, I am. It's a Latin word from patiora. I think I'm probably butchering how to say it, but it means to suffer. So that's kind of a beautiful thing when you think about it, that we're most willing to suffer for the things that we're most passionate about. And I think that landscape photographers in general are definitely willing to suffer a little bit. We get up early in the morning when the rest of the world is asleep, and we'll hike, sometimes hours to get to a location, and it can be cold and windy. And then that moment when the sun starts to crest over the horizon and you can feel the light change and everything, it's just, it's a special kind of reward that we get from doing that. And I think that night photographers and daytime photographers definitely share that willingness to suffer a little bit to have that experience. But night photographers, I mean, man, sometimes we can spend an entire night to get a single shot and go home feeling excited about that. One of my very first shoots this winter was out at Moraine Lake. So I don't know if you guys are aware, but Moraine Lake is one of these super iconic lakes in the Canadian Rockies. And the road from sort of the village of Lake Louise up to Moraine Lake is a steep, windy, kind of narrow mountain road. And as soon as it starts to snow, they have to close the road to vehicle traffic because of risk of avalanche. But you can go in there on skis, you can go in there, you can hike in there or whatever. And Moraine Lake is just one of the most beautiful, scenic, blue-green glacial lakes in all of North America. It's in the Valley of the 10 Peaks. It's just so stunning. And one of the sort of bucket list shots for a lot of landscape photographers is to get Moraine Lake with a blanket of snow, snow in the trees, snow in the mountains, but before the lake actually freezes. And because it's high altitude and because it's not a very deep lake, it freezes really quickly. So Canadian Thanksgiving is October 11th, or it's October 11th this year. Or sorry, it was October 14th. And just after Canadian Thanksgiving, when the road closed, I hiked up there to get hopefully a sunset shot. But my hike went a little bit sideways. So the round trip, it's like a 25-kilometer hike. And about the third kilometer in, I strained my hip flexor, which is an injury I had last spring, and it's really uncomfortable. But last spring, I bailed on my hike. And this time I was like, I'm not bailing on this hike. I'm just going to do this. I really want this. And if I don't do it now, it could be frozen in 2 days. And it was frozen in 2 days. So I pushed myself through a very uncomfortable, but not serious injury to, get up to the lake. And it took me much longer than expected because the snow was about 18 inches deep. So I'm kind of pushing snow, and then I'm on somewhat icy footing, and I didn't have micro spikes with me. So my boots were sliding at every step, and I was carrying a heavy pack. That was self-inflicted. I carried 2 camera bodies, 3 lenses, 2 tripods, and a gimbal because I thought I was going to do a bunch of video recording. And because it took me so long to get up there, I arrived just in time to miss a beautiful sunset. I was still climbing up the mountain when the light was just going off and everything was so beautiful. And I was so upset with myself. But at the same time, there's only so much I could do having this injury and carrying heavy stuff. And, it just was what it was. But the clouds cleared off, and I could see them clearing off. Even as I was hiking, they were clearing off, and they weren't forecast to clear off, but it just seemed like a really good opportunity to stay and get Milky Way. So the last of the Milky Way season for us here in the north is October, and the Milky Way core is only visible for about 20 minutes. And I stayed and shot Milky Way, and I got this beautiful low cloud floating through the valley. I got Milky Way rising above that. The lake was semi-frozen, but I still got that really rich blue-green color in the lake. And it was the most rewarding thing, even though I suffered so badly and the hike down was so miserable, and I lost my cell phone, and I lost a little light that I was carrying with me for night shooting.
But you got the picture.
But I got the shot,
and
it was so good. I'm so that was my favorite shot of the entire year. The most miserable hike, the absolutely most suffering I have done all year. And that includes the 110 kilometer, 5 days of hiking I did in September. This was definitely way more miserable, but the rewards were just out of this world. I got a shot for me that was absolutely bucket list.
I understand the attraction of nighttime with snow. I get that, especially if there's like a full moon. It could be just magic out there. And in fact, last night I was out shooting with a camera that I'm reviewing that's designed really for low light stuff, and it's a whole different world at night. I do most of my shooting during the day, but it's also refreshing to shoot at night because the whole quality of light and what's going on is very, very different. And today's cameras make it possible to handhold in almost darkness. But what I'm kind of curious, we've been talking about suffering under ridiculously cold weather and deep snow and everything else. Can we assume that it's also okay to go out in June and July at night to take pictures?
Oh, yeah.
And what is the better season as far as photographically? Is it better in winter or is there no difference as far as light quality?
Okay, so as far as light quality, every location that you visit is going to be different at different times of the year. Here in the Rockies, we have some really special light that happens in November. Their locals call it Never Miss a Sunrise November. And it's because the light just kicks off and you get amazing, red fire skies, pinks, just gorgeous, gorgeous skies here in November. So I think in the Rockies, for quality of light, November is sort of a local favorite time to shoot. In terms of night sky photography, that changes throughout the year. Obviously, the Milky Way core isn't visible the whole year. We start to see it here in February, and then October is kind of the end of it. But then in the wintertime, we get to see other constellations like Orion, and that's also really fun to shoot. But back to your comment about the quality of light at night, I love the experience of shooting at night because every single night is so different. With the moonrise and the moonset at different times and different levels of illumination, you can go and visit the exact same spot at the exact same time of night. So 11 p.m. at the Emerald Lake Lodge, and you will get a different shot every single night because of different quality of light. If you visit that same spot at 11 a.m. every single day, you're going to get very, very similar light. You might get cloudy conditions or, a little bit more, a little bit less, but probably you're going to be shooting at f11. Whereas, when you visit that spot at night, you might be shooting at f11 if you have a full moon, and you might be shooting at f28 if you have no moonlight at all. So the appeal and the challenge to me for night photography is that it's constantly changing. There's no sort of hard and fast rule about what settings can I use at night. You could tell people, oh, you can shoot wide open and ISO 3200 and adjust your shutter accordingly. But really, on a full moon night, you can shoot at like f11 or f16. I've time lapsed at night at f16.
Wow.
So yeah, and that's also going to be dependent on your gear, obviously. I shoot with Sony, so, my cameras are very light sensitive. But yeah, that experience at night, that changes, and that's what makes it both fun and challenging.
Which of the Sony cameras are you using?
So I have used like pretty much all of them. I have, all of the Alpha line, I should say.
Right.
I just started to sell some of my camera bodies because I was making room for the new A7S III. I have the original A7S. I love that camera. And that's actually the very first camera that I had for my very first Sony camera for night shooting. And that's what really set me on the path to shooting with Sony.
Yeah, I assume it would be the S version that you'd be going for if night photography is really what you specialize in. That camera is just made for it.
Oh, there's just no question. I've had groups of students out, shooting, and I've had my Sony A7S sitting, side by side with them, and they'll say, "Oh, I have the exact same settings as you. Why doesn't my picture look like yours?" And it's because there's no comparison when it comes to night shooting with that A7S line. I'm super excited to get my hands on the A7S III. I'm still waiting. I'm hoping that I get it here sometime in the next couple of weeks, but it's been a long, impatient wait for me on that one. But I will say that my primary cameras I have two Sony A7R IIIs, and I use them for night shooting. They're not as sensitive as the A7S line is. There's just no comparison. But, using certain techniques like stacking for noise reduction and stuff like that, you can get really good quality images, and the resolution is such that I can print them off and hang them on my wall.
And let's say after a long hike that you described, do you then set, your settings, or do you kind of go up with everything kind of ready to go and then just start shooting? And how do you kind of describe, your workflow when you're out in a location and you do want to adjust and it's cold and it's windy and you're not feeling so hot? How do you kind of do you do as much as you can before you head out?
That's a really good question. I think that for most of what I do, I have to respond to the light that I have. So, I can't really think about settings ahead of time, but I do think about my equipment. So making sure that my batteries are all charged, even if I have to use like a remote trigger. So if I do a really long exposure, 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that, I have to have a trigger. And making sure that I have good batteries, and that is really essential. Making sure that my body is taken care of. If I'm planning on going out, I typically hike in my sort of bottom layers. Like, I'll hike in a long sleeve shirt or a really light jacket because I get really hot when I hike. And then I make sure that I have enough warm clothes that I can put on immediately when I get there, that I can trap in all that heat from hiking and stay comfortable as much as possible. I run cold. I'm like most women that I know, I'm always cold. And so this year, just a few weeks ago, actually, I was downtown Calgary, and I saw an advertisement for a jacket that said "Never be cold again." And this jacket is so big. It's meant for people doing Arctic expeditions. It's so big that it looks like I am wearing two sofas. But I was so happy in it. I put it on as soon as I got on location up at Moraine Lake. And I actually warmed up over a period of time putting the jacket on because I was a bit chilly when I put all my layers on. And that's not an experience I typically have. So ladies, if you're listening and you're cold, message me and I'll give you the goods on this jacket.
Men too.
Do
Jeez, I
you
get
put any
cold.
kind of liners into your boots? Because extremities are the first things to go, your fingertips and your toes and your feet and stuff like that. So do you take any precautions? Because your coat does not help your feet.
No, the coat doesn't help the feet. I still struggle in the boot department, to be quite honest. I've tried a lot of different boots and I still haven't found something I'm really happy with. There is a product that I use that's quite helpful. It's like a chemical warmer. It is a chemical warmer, but it's the insole shape, not the ones that just go on the toes. And then for my fingers, I have the warmest gloves in the whole world. And they're basically required equipment for people that come and visit me and do tours with me in the wintertime here. These gloves are made by the Heat Company, and they're the most essential piece of gear that I take with me on a shoot. Like, I don't want frostbite on my fingers. So these gloves have a little liner that goes inside, and then they're a mitten that's windproof, and they're really, really warm. And there's pockets in them that you can put chemical warmers. So they're just the best things that I've ever used.
I know the Heat Company rang a bell. I just did an article for B&H Explorer, the website, on cold weather, gear and stuff like that. And I know we carry these fingertip and foot warmers from the Heat Company in packs that these chemical warmers. So we actually sell these things. I'm not sure if we have the gloves or not.
Yes, you do.
But
yes, you do.
We do. Oh, there you go. All right. So
now I don't know if they're in stock, but I have been directing people to your website to order them for like 3 years now.
Do you take your gloves off and on when you're doing your settings in your camera? Is that possible to work with these gloves in that sense?
So you shouldn't. So the gloves, because they have this a liner on the inside, you don't have to. You can. They have like a zipper, and you can fold back the finger mitten part of it and reveal just the liner inside for when you need to change the settings. And then you can fold that back over, and of course it's got the hand warmers, the chemical warmers in it, and so your fingers can, if they do start to get cold with the liners, because they will, then you can warm up again. So I had a lady on I had a ladies workshop last January, and it was funny because this is, like I said, it's required gear. It's the most important thing you can have is warm fingers. So I had a group of ladies and they all showed up wearing, Heat Company mittens, which was awesome. But one lady, she took them off to operate her drone. And we were out at Abraham Lake, it's windy. It was really cold. This was during a cold snap. So, here in the Rockies, we can get some really cold temperatures, like unbelievably cold. They don't typically last for more than a few days, but...
Just curious, what's really cold?
So minus 40 Celsius, and it got as low as minus 50 Celsius last year.
Oh, wow.
Just for like a day or two. Now, we weren't out shooting in minus 50 Celsius. We do go out shooting in minus 30 Celsius. And I can tell you that if you take your gloves off at minus 30 Celsius, it takes approximately 2 minutes to get either frost nip or frostbite. So I don't let people take their gloves off, but she did take her gloves off to operate her drone. And so her fingers were on the controller, and I wasn't around to give her heck for that, but she managed to get frost nip inside of about 2 minutes. So her fingers had like little blisters where she was touching the drone. I just say that because it's really important to take care of your body when you're shooting in cold temperatures.
And can I ask then, can you describe, and maybe there's no typical shoot for you, but do you tend to do them, kind of last minute decisions, or are they very planned out? And how long would a day or an evening last? Do you spend several days? Is there any kind of pattern that you found yourself doing when you want to go out and shoot? And I'm not talking about when you're going out with groups or leading a workshop, but when you're on your own.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a real mix. I would say that there's some shots that I have in mind that are basically bucket list shots that I'm waiting for a certain set of conditions to align. And in that sense, I've been planning certain shots for like 2 years or 3 years. Sometimes I have to wait a really long time. Typically, what I do shoot is pretty well researched and pretty well planned, especially at night, because I want to know, the alignment of the Milky Way or other constellations in the sky. each location has sort of, a window or a time frame that's going to give better results, or, is going to give me what I'm looking for, like the Moraine Lake shot. That window is so short. It's just a few days between the first snowfall and the lake freezing over. So I do a lot of planning. It's very, very seldom, like maybe 5% of the time, that I just happen upon something, rock up and shoot that and get an amazing shot at night. I think most of what I do is pretty well planned. But my daytime stuff, that's not necessarily true. I don't really plan that. I just, I look at the weather and I watch the conditions, and when things look like they're promising, I'll head out to shoot. So,
and a shoot like that will be several hours. Is that generally the idea, or do you give yourself a day or two? And I mean, I'm not exactly sure how far you are from your home to even get to these locations. So,
Oh, some of them are like 5 minutes away, because I do live right in the base of the mountains. That's pretty awesome.
Wow.
I'm 22 kilometers. It's like maybe an 18-minute drive from my house to Vermilion Lakes, which is a really kind of popular, iconic spot in Banff National Park. And then, obviously some places require hiking to get to, which I do more of in the summertime. I do a lot less in the winter with the cold. And a typical night shoot for me is, I'm out for at least half the night. So early in the season, the Milky Way shows up, just before sunrise. And late in the season, it shows up just after sunset. So, I'm waiting for a certain alignment where the Milky Way is in the right position for the photo that I want to take. So it depends on how long it takes to do that. Sometimes on really dark nights, I'll shoot the blue hour foreground to blend with the sky. And that's without moving the tripod or the camera. So sometimes a shoot might be, I shoot blue hour and then I wait, an hour and a half for it to get really dark. And then I might have to wait another hour for the Milky Way or the stars to be in the position that I want them to be in. So I might invest like half of a night or a full night into getting a single shot.
Gotcha. And do you always or often normally go by yourself? Like on that hike that you described before? Are you solo, or do you go with a hiking partner at least?
I always try to have hiking partners. It's obviously more fun to have people around and to share the experience. And sometimes that just doesn't work with, other people's schedules. That particular hike I did on my own, and I was pretty glad for it, actually, because I wouldn't have wanted to make anybody go as slow as I was going. But yeah, I try to hike with a partner when I can. I think it's safer, and I just enjoy the experience more. But there's a certain a sense of peace that I get from going solo, so I don't mind going solo either.
Sounds beautiful. So before we take a little break, can I ask what you'll be talking about at OPTIC?
So you can tell I'm full about winter right now. I'm like in the winter mindset. So I'm going to be talking about shooting in the Canadian Rockies during the winter time. Walking people through the gear that I use, how I stay warm. People are often surprised to hear I drive a Mini Cooper, so I'm actually going to give a little tour of my car and why I think that it works in the wintertime. And yeah, just some of the challenges and the joys of winter shooting. It is really my favorite season.
Okay, we're going to take a short break and be back with more with Rachel Jones-Ross. And of course, we're also going to be talking a little bit more about the OPTIC conference, which again is sponsored by Epson, Adobe, PhotoPro, Fujifilm, Wacom, Tamron, Sigma, and others. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
We are back. Rachel, tell us a little bit about night photography in your pajamas. What's that about?
Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
I love it. Sounds comfy.
Well, when everything kind of closed down and I had lots of clients that were waiting to do workshops, I decided to make the transition into trying online stuff. And I have to say, I was pretty skeptical at first. I think I really value being able to be face to face with people and working in small groups and really getting to know people and working with them at the level that they're at. So I was skeptical that online workshops could produce similar results. But I designed this online workshop for night photography. It runs for 10 days. There's class time every single day, so about 90 minutes, or depending on how many stories I get into, but about 90 minutes a day of class time. And then I do one-on-one sessions with people outside of that. So people can work with what they learned in class the night before, go out and practice, bring me back their images, get feedback, oh, this is what I had to struggle with, or I didn't know how to do this with my camera, and I can work with them. And it's been amazing to see the progress from day 1 to day 10. And it's been really amazing for me also just to see how well I can connect with people and kind of meet them at their level and work with them where they're at and help them to grow. And I think in lots of ways, it's more learning focused than when you travel to do photography. Because when we're traveling, we have other concerns. What's the weather doing? What are the road conditions? Your basics, body needs to, hungry, tired, that kind of stuff. So there's all these other factors that work in, and you do get to learn, and you learn in particular situations. But doing this online stuff is super structured, and I think it really allows people to learn something really in depth and really practice those things without that pressure of having somebody right next to them who seems to be connecting with something really easily when they're struggling or anything like that. So it kind of takes out that little bit of pressure of just working next to people or within a group of people. And I've seen really good results with it. So it's something that I'm excited about, and I plan on doing more of. Hopefully in February or so, I'll launch another online workshop that's a little more broad, more daytime focused as well. But the night stuff has been really fun.
It seems that a lot of people, I've spoken to a couple of people who do these online workshops, and a lot of people were a little bit skeptical about whether it could work rather than standing in front of an audience of people where you really do have that one-on-one contact. I mean, we even feel that here on the podcast. When we're in a studio, we're looking at each other, we have eye contact, you read body English. It's a little bit more difficult when we're working remotely. Mm-hmm. And we're literally we're recording this show from 3 different states and 2 countries, which is pretty wonderful in many ways. But a lot of people say that, from what I heard, that they are actually surprised of how effective the online classes have been going. I mean, they're even having wine tastings virtually now. I mean, if you, it's like, so you could obviously talk about photography.
Yeah. Yeah, it has surprised me as well. Like I said, I really value just being face to face with people and developing relationships. I tend to keep my workshops really small. So I work with 4 or 5 people. That's kind of an ideal number for me. Not that I can't teach more, but for me, being able to connect with people, get to know them, and really work with them at their level, I can't really say that enough, is most rewarding for me.
And what do you say? What are some of the stumbling blocks that you see with some of the folks? I mean, especially beginners. Let's put it that way. But is there 1 or 2 things that always kind of seem to trip folks up, and you have to walk them through it?
For night photography, absolutely. So 2 of my favorites are these are my 2 favorite stumbling blocks: aurora photography. People who are even seasoned professionals who go out and they do night shooting, it's like there's a certain amount of pressure or pressure we put ourselves under maybe, but that phenomena is so fleeting, and it can be a couple minutes or it can be hours, it can last all night. But when the aurora kicks off, people just seem to forget how to use their cameras, like 100%. So I find that one interesting to, kind of walk people through. Okay, just start at the beginning. We're still shooting stars. So what's sort of the maximum shutter time you can have at this focal length and this aperture? to get clear stars or sharp stars. And, and you work from there and just sort of, kind of walk people through the process. And the other kind of favorite thing for me is when people shoot at night, because the night sky is something that they don't get to see very often or don't get to experience very often. I feel like a lot of times people just throw composition totally out the window. The automatic reaction tends to be, I want to shoot as wide as humanly possible to get as much night sky as possible. So you get this tiny little landscape in the very bottom of the frame or something, and then this huge sky. And sometimes that works, art is art. Sometimes it really does work. But compositionally, when we think about it, the stuff that works for us during the day for a composition also works for us at night. I think when it comes to night photography, those are sort of two very common stumbling blocks. When people are learning, sometimes it's, for beginners, often it's focus. For more experienced shooters, it's trying to take the thing that they can see in their mind and make that the thing that they're producing in their images.
I think one of the big challenges of night photography, not that I've done very much of it at all, but we're all photographing the same thing. It's the stars. Now, obviously, there are different degrees of light, and the nature of the light changes every single night and from moment to moment, and even in subtle ways. But essentially, we're all photographing, say, the Milky Way or a constellation, and that's what it is. So what really makes the difference is how do you frame it? What are you putting around it? And again, that's where your landscape part comes in. We're all photographing the same egg, okay? But how are you lighting it and how are you framing it? And that's really what the difference is. And I think once people get past the technical aspect of taking night photographs and having them come out well is, okay, now how do you frame this subject so that it now looks different from everybody else's pictures of the same Milky Way?
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's why I say, that sort of common notion that, the wider the lens, the better, so you can get more sky in. It's a bit misleading because, the sky is really special when you have not experienced it before. But to produce an image that is compelling and has all the elements that kind of draw us in and keep our eyes lingering through the image and really taking it in, those are the same elements that we're going to be capturing during the day.
And can you'd mentioned, especially for beginners working on focusing, do you have any specific tips you can offer when it comes to that? And also on focus stacking, which can be very difficult at night. Do you have any techniques that you offer your students?
Absolutely. So when it comes to focusing, obviously practicing during the day at finding that sort of infinity critical focus is really helpful. And being able to work with your lens so that you understand how your lens behaves, because, typically our lenses do have an infinity marker on them or whatever that will tell us that that's, where it should be focused to infinity, but it's not. You put that lens on multiple different bodies and that might change just a little bit. So going out during the day helps. Finding infinity on your lens and you can mark it in some way that helps. But there is a filter that I recommend to people who are either trying a new lens or struggle with focus, or maybe they have really poor eyesight. This filter is made by Lonely Speck, and it's called Sharp Star. So basically, it's a filter holder that you have to get for the particular size of lens that you have, and it's a plastic piece that slides down in there, and it has little lines on it, and that diffracts the light and it creates like an X shape. So when your image is in focus, you get this X shape with a line through it. It just takes all the guesswork out of, am I focused or am I not focused?
And do you leave the filter on when you shoot?
No, so you leave the holder on and you just slide the little plastic piece out. So once you find that focus, it just takes the guesswork out. So I use that even if I'm just testing a new lens. If I'm testing a new lens, I want to be sure that when I'm writing a review, I haven't had some kind of user error that makes it look not as sharp as it could be. So if I'm unfamiliar with a lens, I will often use the Sharp Star just to be 100% confident that I have it in focus.
Does focus peaking work for stars? I've never bothered to notice.
It helps a lot. So focus peaking is kind of just a tool in the toolkit. It's not something you can rely on 100%, obviously.
Okay.
But if for me, I use like a mid-level focus peaking and I set it to red, and it just kind of helps to see where is the sharpest point of light if I'm focusing on a star. I definitely use it. I use it all the time.
Well, my question, Rachel, goes back a little bit to the online workshops because, I'm assuming folks are just going out either in their own backyard or in a nearby location, which you don't really see all the possibilities of their of what they have, right? I mean, do they shoot and then come back to you and show you the work? So to kind of like advise them on composition must be almost impossible doing it online. Is that the case?
So when I say that I work with my students, I really work with my students. If they have an internet connection, they can take me with them on location and just show me things with their phone. So they can either text me the pictures or we can do a live chat. And they can show me what they're seeing. And the other thing is, I can talk to people about, what I look for in an image to set up for a composition. And then they can go out there and look for that themselves. And then get feedback the next day. And it can be difficult to kind of anticipate or imagine what might have been if they had moved the camera a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. But I have had the experience where they literally just take their camera out and they take pictures during the day of a location and they get advice from me, or we do like a FaceTime or a live look at what they're looking at. And I really work with people at the level that they're at. So if that's the help that they need, that's the help I'm happy to give them. During the online workshops, I'm available to them just as if I was in person. So that means from the time I wake up in the morning and we're doing our classes and our one-on-one sessions, I still keep my groups small. So, kind of like 6 people. And that means that I'm doing probably 6 hours of one-on-one sessions a day. And then, this extra stuff of just helping them scout or, not everybody needs that help either, but some people will need that help. So I'm happy to get it.
And do they interact with one another?
Absolutely. So part of each day is an online class. So we will meet either using Skype or Zoom. I've used lots of different programs, but they do have a chance to talk to each other. And we also do sessions that are, maybe an image critique session where they get to walk me through and the group through, this is, some of their favorite images, or this is what they struggled with. And they do get to know each other. And then we have like a Facebook group and stuff where people can keep in touch. So it is a really nice way to connect with other people in different parts of the world that are doing the same thing and enjoy the same thing as you.
That's great. So I wanted to jump back a bit because we talked earlier about planning some of your trips, and some of them are planned, well in advance. You have a little window of time, a few days or hours, even maybe. What do you use in the setup and in the planning of your trips, particularly, location or weather apps or sky mapping apps? Do you have a kind of set of apps that you go to a lot?
I absolutely have some favorites. One of my all-time favorites, can't live without tools, is an app called Windy. That one's for weather. It helps me to look at cloud forecasts, tidal forecasts, fog forecasts. That one is really good for pretty much anything. And it has multiple weather models that I can look at. So I can look at like a North American weather model or a European weather model.
And do you
works
see
in all
that,
parts of the world.
especially in the mountains, how accurate can they be? And are you surprised at how accurate they can be?
They're not super accurate in the mountains, unfortunately. And that's because when you're dealing with mountain weather, the mountains are so big that they kind of create their own little microclimates. And so, living in an area like this, I'm just familiar with it. So I know what to expect, I guess. I can extrapolate from the weather that we do have. So for example, all of the whole mountain range can be under a pretty dreary looking forecast, but areas like the town of Banff, Canmore, and the area around Abraham Lake, they're kind of at the edge of the mountains. And so it's kind of like getting a mix of mountain weather and prairie weather because they're really on the edge of the mountain range. And so we often get different weather in those areas than we would more deep in the mountains. So, when it comes to mountain forecasts, there's nothing that's super accurate. There is actually a website that I go to called Mountain Forecast. And that helps a little bit. It helps to just get information from more than one source and then try and figure out what it might look like. And also having experience in the area helps a lot. But as a general rule, Windy is a really good planning tool that I just can't recommend enough for people in terms of weather planning. Another one that I use a lot is PhotoPills. It's super for night photography. It has lots of different little tools in it. One of them is called Spot Stars, and it's an algorithm that'll help you figure out based on your particular camera, so taking into account your sensor, your focal length and aperture, what is the maximum shutter time you can get before stars begin to trail. That one it's just vital. People don't realize when they're using sort of a rule of thumb that they're going to get some pretty significant star trailing if, even if they're only open for 8 seconds, if they're at, 21 millimeters and f1.8 or something like that. So I really like PhotoPills for planning. It also has like augmented reality where you can see the position of the Milky Way at a particular location at a given time. So those are all really good tools for planning night shoots.
And I'm curious also about your hiking. I mean, do you stay on trails? I mean, do you have any apps in terms of mapping out where you're going to go? And again, how often do you kind of just go off the trail?
So I try to stick to trails where I can. I think it's, better in high impact areas to stick to the trails, obviously. And in low impact areas, it can be better to disperse impact. So, if I'm out with other people and we're in an area that doesn't have hiking trails, we try not to follow each other directly, in somebody else's footsteps. But generally in terms of planning, a lot of where I go there is hiking trails, and there's lots of really good tools for looking at trails. One of them is called All Trails. It's a really good hiking resource. Another one is called Fat Maps. I really enjoy this one. It's new to me this year, but it has a feature that kind of helps you look at a 3D representation of topographical maps. So even if you've never been to a location before, it can kind of give you an idea of how things line up or the shape, the angles and shapes. For me, it's obviously mountains, but there's other types of terrain that you could look at using Fat Maps. So I really enjoy that. And it also, I can plan a route either on trail or off trail, and it'll tell me what the elevation gain and loss is, give me an estimation of how long it will take me to do that route. It's a really good resource.
Do you notify any organization or any of the authorities when you're about to go out into the wilderness by yourself with a group? Because things can go wrong, and I think it's important to have people know where you are. So do you do anything like that? Do you give your flight plans into anybody?
Not necessarily into an organization, but I do file a safety plan if I'm in an area where I think that I'm either really out of contact for a long time. For me, if I'm just going solo, I just let one of my family members know where I'm going to be. I carry a Garmin InReach with me, and that allows me I can basically text home via satellite. It's a little slow, but it's awesome. I can use it from my phone. If I don't lose my phone on the trail, but I can also use it like the old T9 texters where you press one button a couple times to get to where you want to go. But anyway, so I use a Garmin InReach, which allows me to get weather updates. It has the capability of sending an SOS if I get into any kind of trouble, and I can text family. and let them know where I am. I do file a safety plan when I'm doing anything solo, if I'm working in cold conditions, really if there's any risk whatsoever. And when I'm out with groups, it's the same thing. If I'm going into a really remote area, then somebody always knows where we're going. I always have the Garmin inReach with me. There's just certain things that you can do to minimize, having those really bad stories that end poorly.
You mentioned earlier testing some lenses. What are your general go-to lenses, and do you use other brands' lenses on your Sony cameras? Because that's obviously one of the advantages of Sony mirrorless.
So I have used other brands in the past. I have stuck with Zeiss, which is, Sony Zeiss lenses for some of my prime lenses. I have the 18 millimeter Batis and the 21 millimeter Loxia. I love those
gorgeous.
lenses. They're super sharp. Like they're just ridiculously sharp. So for night shooting, I love to carry those ones with me if I'm not hiking too far, or it really depends for me. What lenses I use depends on kind of the level of difficulty of the hike or the location or whatever. If I need to carry only light gear, I might still take two bodies with me, but I'll bring the zoom lenses because they're a little bit more versatile. If I'm driving up to a location and I can have access to 3 or 4 camera bodies and, work multiple lenses and stuff, then no problem. I'll bring my whole kit. But I have a range of lenses, zooms and primes. I prefer to shoot with the primes for night shooting, but that doesn't always work out for me. And one lens that pretty much stays on my camera all the time is the Sony 16-35. I use it for time-lapsing. And when I'm time-lapsing, I want to make sure that my sensor stays clean. So I just really don't take the lens off. And that makes it so that I don't have to worry about dust on the sensor and stuff like that, because it's really impossible to remove that. So I like it for time-lapsing. I'll use it for night stuff. And then I have another body that I will, I'll shoot primes with, or, another zoom if I'm hiking and stuff like that. So it really depends on where I'm going and kind of the level of difficulty of the location.
Rachel, you have a few kids. Do they photograph? Have you been able to pass on your passion to them?
I do have a few kids. I have 3. So they are, they're 23, 20, and 17 in December. My oldest, my daughter, she's extremely artistic, does beautiful drawings, and does a lot of custom sort of digital work with Photoshop. And she's not into photography at all. My middle child is, I joke about him being a little bit like a robot. He's got a very mathematical engineering mind, and he's just gifted in all of those ways. He's been programming since he was like 6, but zero interest in photography. And my youngest had an interest in photography, or so I thought, but it turns out it was really more of an interest in Insta fame. And so he will come out and help me with things. Bless his heart, he's coming out to help me do some filming today. It's as much moral support and just, a cheerleader for me as it is anything else. But they're all very, very supportive, and they'll come out and help me at any time, but they've just never really taken an interest in photography.
Right. Yeah, well, I hear that. I mean, I tried to get my kids to work on stuff, and they're like, nah, Dad, that's okay. But anyway.
I look at my kids and go, investment banking.
Yeah, right. That's the best way they can support your photography, right?
That's it.
Pass you some of that money.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so
well, the old joke is a freelance photographer is a guy with 2 Nikons and a wife with a full-time job. Back in the day, that's what we used to say, but it's an element of truth to that.
Yeah.
Well, that is a wrap of another show. Rachel, pleasure talking with you. Learned a few things here, which is always a pleasure to do. And again, you're going to be speaking at the 2020 B&H OPTIC All-Star Conference. Do you know what day you're going to be speaking?
I believe I'm speaking on November 22nd.
Okay, that's a Sunday, I believe. And again, all of the times and all the speakers and the sponsors, that'll all be in the show notes. And if people would like to see some of your work in the meantime, where can they go?
So I have a website. You can visit me at www.astralisphotography.com. Astralis is another one of those geeky Latin words that means of a star or made from the stars. So that's where my photography came from, if that helps you to remember.
Okay. All the links to all of your sites will be in the show notes with all the other information from today's episode, along with photographs of yours. So people want to start seeing stuff right there, they can. And again, you will be speaking at the 2020 B&H OPTIC All-Star Conference on November 22nd. And again, all those times will be on the show notes as well. Rachel, it's terrific speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it and had a good laugh, and I hope to do it again sometime.
We hope to have you back. That's great. And if you'd like to have a heads up the moment a new B&H Photography podcast goes live, it is real easy. All you have to do is head on over to wherever you get your podcast fix. Type B&H Photography Podcast into the search field, and boom, you are now part of the family. You can also find us on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. All that said, my name is Alan Weitz, and on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, thank you so much for tuning in today.